The dinner rush had barely started when the trouble walked in. Three men in dark jackets, eyes scanning, hands hidden in their pockets. Predators. The waitress, Emma, didn't notice at first. She was just doing her job, carrying plates, smiling politely, surviving another shift. But he noticed. At the corner table, the Mafia boss, known on the streets as Salvatore Kane, watched the men follow her with their eyes, their whispers, their smirks, the way they tracked her every step like she was already theirs. When she walked past his table with shaking hands, he gently caught her wrist. Not rough, not threatening, protective. He leaned in and whispered something she didn't expect from the most feared man in the city. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your dad." Emma froze. Her breath caught. "What? Why?" "Don't look," he murmured. "They're here for you." Her knees nearly gave out. She didn't even know who they was, but the fear in his voice told her everything. He stood up, placed a steady hand on her shoulder, and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Come on, sweetheart. Daddy's taking you home." The entire restaurant stopped. The three men stood, too, but not fast enough. Because the moment they reached for their weapons, Salvatore Kane was already moving. What happened next shocked everyone in that restaurant and revealed a truth Emma had never imagined about her past. Stay with me until the end, because the real reason those men came for her will shake everything you thought you knew about this story. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Emma Martinez had been working double shifts at Romano's restaurant for 3 months straight. Every night, the same routine. Clock in at 5, serve tables until midnight, count her tips, and walk 6 blocks to her cramped studio apartment. She needed the money. Community college wasn't going to pay for itself, and her mother's medical bills kept piling up. She was 22, tired, and invisible. Or so she thought. That Tuesday evening felt different from the moment she tied her apron. The air was thick with tension she couldn't name. The regular customers seemed quieter. Even Marco, the head chef who never stopped joking around, kept glancing toward the front entrance like he was expecting something. Emma had learned to read the room during her years of waitressing. Rich neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, family diners, upscale bistros. She'd worked them all, but Romano's was different. It sat in the heart of Little Italy, where conversations stopped when strangers walked in, and everyone knew everyone else's business. The three men entered at exactly 7:15. Emma was carrying a tray of breadsticks to table 6 when she caught sight of them in her peripheral vision. Dark clothing, serious faces. They didn't look like they were here for the chicken parmesan. She set down the breadsticks, with practiced ease, her smile never wavering. Customer service had become second nature, but something cold settled in her stomach as she watched the hostess seat them near the window. They weren't looking at their menus. They were looking at her. At the corner table, Salvatore Kane sat alone as he did every Tuesday night. Same table, same order. Veal marsala, red wine, and tiramisu. The staff knew better than to bother him unless he called them over. Emma had served him exactly 3 times in her 3 months there, and each interaction lasted less than 30 seconds. He was probably in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything around him. His suits were expensive, his manners impeccable, and his reputation preceded him everywhere he went. Emma didn't know the details, but she'd overheard enough kitchen gossip to understand that Salvatore Kane was not someone you crossed. Tonight, those calculating eyes were fixed on the 3 newcomers. Emma tried to focus on her work. Table 2 needed more water. Table 5 was ready for their check. Table 8 wanted extra parmesan on their pasta. Normal things. Routine things. But every time she moved through the dining room, she felt those 3 pairs of eyes tracking her movements. When she approached their table with menus and water glasses, the tallest one smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Emma Martinez," he said, reading her name tag slowly. Pretty name for a pretty girl. Her hand trembled slightly as she set down the glasses. "Thank you." Can I start you gentlemen with some appetizers tonight? Actually, the second man said, leaning forward, we were hoping you could help us with something else. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry, but I'm just here to take your order. The third man, who had been silent until now, reached into his jacket. Emma's breath caught, but he only pulled out a photograph, a small, grainy image that he slid across the table toward her. Do you recognize this woman? Emma glanced down and her world tilted. The photograph showed a woman with dark hair and familiar eyes. Her mother, but younger, much younger, standing next to a man Emma had never seen before. I don't understand, Emma whispered. Your mother never told you about her first husband? The tall man asked. About the family she left behind in Chicago? Emma's legs felt weak. Her mother had always been vague about her past, changing the subject whenever Emma asked about her father or their family history. She'd assumed it was too painful to discuss. I think you have me confused with someone else, Emma managed. The men exchanged looks. No confusion here, sweetheart. You're exactly who we're looking for. That's when she felt the gentle but firm grip on her wrist. Salvatore Kane had moved so quietly she hadn't heard him approach. His presence behind her felt like a shield. You're in danger, he whispered, his voice carrying an authority that made her believe him instantly. Pretend I'm your dad. Emma's mind raced. Danger from what? From whom? These men knew her mother somehow. They had photographs. They were asking questions she couldn't answer. What? Why? She breathed. Don't look, Salvatore murmured, his hand moving to her shoulder in a protective gesture. They're here for you. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Other diners had noticed the tension at the table by the window. Conversations died. Forks stopped clinking against plates. Even the kitchen noise seemed muted. Emma realized that everyone in Romano's knew exactly who Salvatore Kane was, and now he was protecting her. Come on, sweetheart, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent dining room. Daddy's taking you home. The performance was flawless. To anyone watching, it looked like an overprotective father collecting his daughter from work. But Emma could feel the coiled tension in his muscles, see the way his free hand remained near his jacket. The three men rose from their seats, their movements synchronized and predatory. The tall one's smile had vanished. Now wait just a minute. He never finished the sentence. Salvatore Kane moved with the precision of someone who had survived decades in a world where hesitation meant death. His hand emerged from his jacket, holding something that made the three men freeze instantly. Instantly. What Salvatore pulled from his jacket wasn't a gun. It was a phone. But the way he held it, the authority in his voice when he spoke, made it deadlier than any weapon. Vincent, he said into the device, his eyes never leaving the three men. Romano's. Now. Within seconds, the restaurant's atmosphere shifted. The kitchen staff emerged from the back. The busboys stopped clearing tables. Even elderly Mrs. Romano appeared from behind the register. Everyone moved with purpose, positioning themselves around the dining room like pieces on a chessboard. Emma realized she wasn't just in any restaurant. She was in Salvatore Kane's territory. The tall man who had shown her the photograph raised his hands slowly. Mr. Kane, we don't want any trouble. We're just here to collect what belongs to our family. Nothing in my restaurant belongs to anyone but me, Salvatore replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. And Emma here has been under my protection since the day she walked through that door. Emma's mind reeled. Protection? She'd been working here for 3 months and barely exchanged 20 words with this man. How could she be under his protection? You don't understand, the second man interjected, desperation creeping into his voice. Her mother stole something from us, something very valuable. The debt passes to the daughter. Salvatore's expression darkened. Enlighten me. The third man, who had remained silent, finally spoke. His voice was thin, nervous. 25 years ago, Maria Martinez witnessed something she shouldn't have. Our boss offered her a choice: disappear forever or face the consequences. She chose to disappear, but she took something with her. Insurance, she called it. Emma's legs gave out. She sank into the nearest chair as the pieces clicked together. Her mother's reluctance to talk about the past, the way she always looked over her shoulder, the frequent moves when Emma was younger, the medical bills that never seemed to match her mother's actual condition. "What did she take?" Emma whispered. The tall man smiled that cold smile again. "Financial records, names, dates, enough evidence to bring down half the Chicago organization. We've been looking for her for 2 decades, and now we've found you." Salvatore moved closer to Emma, his presence a wall between her and the 3 men. "And what makes you think the daughter knows anything about the mother's business?" "Because," the thin-voiced man said, pulling out another photograph, "Maria Martinez died 3 weeks ago. Cancer, according to the hospital records. But before she died, she sent a package to her daughter. We intercepted the postal records." Emma's world shattered. Her mother was dead 3 weeks ago, but she'd spoken to her just last week. Or had she? Emma tried to remember the conversation, but suddenly couldn't recall her mother's voice, only text messages. Short responses. Excuses about being tired. "You're lying," Emma said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't. The tall man slid the second photograph across a nearby table. It showed her apartment building, her mailbox, a package with her name on it. "Check your apartment, sweetheart. Mailbox key should have opened something very interesting by now." Salvatore's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder. "Even if that's true, the girl doesn't know anything. She's innocent in this." "Innocent or not," the second man said, standing slowly, "she's the only link we have to those records, and our employer is very motivated to retrieve his property." The restaurant door chimed as 3 more men entered. But these weren't more enemies. Emma could tell by the way Salvatore relaxed slightly, by the nods exchanged across the room. "Gentlemen," Salvatore addressed the Chicago men, "I believe this conversation is over. You've had your say. Now leave." The tall man's jaw tightened. "This isn't finished. In my restaurant, everything is finished when I say it's finished." As the 3 men filed toward the exit, the thin-voiced one paused next to Emma's chair. "You have 48 hours to find those records and hand them over. After that, we stop being polite." The door closed behind them with a soft chime that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Emma sat frozen, her mind struggling to process everything. Her mother was dead. There was a package waiting for her. Men with guns were after her for something she knew nothing about. "I need to go home," she whispered. "No," Salvatore said firmly. "That's the first place they'll be watching. But the package will wait. Right now, we need to get you somewhere safe while I make some calls." Emma looked up at him, this stranger who had somehow become her protector. "Why are you helping me?" Salvatore's expression softened slightly. "Because 25 years ago, a young woman named Maria Martinez saved my life. She was working as a bookkeeper for a Chicago family, and she warned me about a hit they'd put out on me. I escaped because of her courage." The room seemed to spin around Emma. "My mother saved you?" "She did more than that. She gave me the information I needed to protect myself and my family. I've been looking for her ever since, to repay that debt. When you walked into my restaurant 3 months ago, I recognized those eyes immediately." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. "She never told me any of this. She was protecting you, just like she protected me all those years ago." One of Salvatore's men approached the table. "Boss, we've got cars positioned outside. 3 black sedans, Chicago plates." Salvatore nodded grimly. "They're not wasting time." He turned back to Emma. "We need to move. Now. Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't follow. Somewhere I can figure out exactly what your mother left you, and how we're going to keep you alive long enough to decide what to do with it." Emma stood on shaking legs. "What if I don't want whatever she left me? What if I just want to go back to serving tables and going to school?" Salvatore's expression was kind but realistic. "Sweetheart, the moment those men walked into this restaurant, your old life ended. But don't worry. I promised your mother I'd protect her family if anything ever happened to her, and I always keep my promises." As they moved toward the restaurant's back exit, Emma caught glimpses of the controlled chaos around them. Staff members were making phone calls, moving with military precision. Customers were being quietly ushered out through the front entrance. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was headquarters. And she was now at the center of a war she never knew existed. The alley behind Romano's was dark, but Emma could make out two black cars waiting with engines running. Salvatore guided her toward the closer one, his men forming a protective circle around them. "Get in," he said, opening the rear door. Emma hesitated. Once she got in that car, there would be no going back to her simple life of college classes and double shifts. But looking at Salvatore's face, she realized that life was already gone. As the car pulled away from Romano's, Emma watched the familiar streets of her neighborhood disappear into the darkness. Somewhere out there, 3 men were planning their next move. Somewhere in her apartment, a package waited with secrets that had gotten her mother killed. And somewhere in this dangerous new world, she would have to find the strength to survive what was coming next. The real question wasn't whether she could handle the truth about her mother's past. The question was whether that truth would be enough to keep them both alive. Both alive. The safe house sat on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind overgrown hedges and rusted gates that had seen better decades. Emma pressed her face against the car window, watching shadows dance between streetlights as they wound through neighborhoods she'd never seen before. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Salvatore glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Somewhere those Chicago boys won't think to look. An old friend owes me a favor." The car turned down a gravel driveway that crunched under the tires like broken glass. Emma's stomach twisted with each bump and turn. 3 hours ago, her biggest concern was whether Table 12 wanted extra cheese on their lasagna. Now she was fleeing through the night, with a man whose reputation preceded him into every room. The house that emerged from the darkness looked abandoned. Paint peeled from its wooden siding, and several windows were boarded up with plywood. But Emma noticed the small details that suggested otherwise. Fresh tire tracks in the mud, a faint glow from behind blackout curtains, the subtle hum of a generator running somewhere behind the structure. "Home, sweet home," Salvatore muttered, parking beside a shed that had seen better years. 2 men emerged from the shadows as they stepped out of the car. Emma recognized the synchronized movement, the way their eyes swept the surrounding area before focusing on their arrivals. These weren't casual friends helping out. These were professionals. "Boss?" The taller one nodded to Salvatore. "Everything's secure. No movement on the perimeter since we arrived." "Good. Any word from Marco about the restaurant?" "All clear. The Chicago team left about an hour after you did, but they'll be back." Emma followed them up creaking wooden steps to a front door that opened before they reached it. The woman who greeted them looked like she could be someone's grandmother, complete with silver hair pinned back in a neat bun and flour dusting her apron. But her eyes held the same alertness Emma had noticed in Salvatore's men. "You must be Maria's daughter," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent Emma couldn't place. "I'm Rosa. Your mother was a dear friend of mine." Emma's throat tightened. "You knew my mother? Knew her? Child. I helped her disappear 25 years ago." The interior of the house contradicted its exterior completely. While the outside screamed abandonment, the inside revealed comfortable furniture, modern electronics, and the warm smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. Emma realized this wasn't just a safe house. It was a home disguised as a ruin. "Sit," Rosa commanded, gesturing toward a worn leather couch. "You look like you haven't eaten in hours." Emma sank into the cushions, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. The adrenaline that had carried her through the evening was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that made her limbs feel heavy. Salvatore settled into the chair across from her, while Rosa disappeared into the kitchen. The sound of plates clinking and water running felt surreal after everything that had happened. "I need you to understand something," Salvatore said, his voice gentler than she'd heard it all evening. "What happened tonight? What those men told you about your mother? It's going to be difficult to process." Emma wrapped her arms around herself. Is it true? Is she really dead? The pause that followed told her everything she needed to know. 3 weeks ago, Salvatore confirmed. I'm sorry, Emma. I tried to reach her when the cancer got bad, but she'd moved again, changed her name again. She was always running. Tears Emma had been holding back since the restaurant finally spilled over. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me? Because she was trying to protect you from exactly what happened tonight. Rosa returned carrying a tray loaded with sandwiches, soup, and steaming coffee. She set it on the coffee table between them and took a seat on the couch beside Emma. Your mother came to me pregnant and terrified, Rosa said, handing Emma a cup of coffee. She'd witnessed something that put her life in danger, but she was more worried about you than herself. Emma cupped the warm mug in her hands, letting the heat seep into her fingers. What did she see? Salvatore and Rosa exchanged a look. Emma was getting tired of adults communicating over her head, making decisions about what she could and couldn't handle. A murder, Salvatore said finally. She was working late at the accounting firm, trying to finish the books for one of Chicago's most powerful families. She heard voices in the next room, looked through the door, and saw something that would have sent half the organization to prison. But instead of going to the police, Rosa continued, she did something smarter. She copied the financial records that proved the murder was connected to years of money laundering, racketeering, and worse. Emma set down her coffee with shaking hands. So she blackmailed them? She protected herself, Salvatore corrected. She told them she'd hidden copies of everything in multiple locations, with instructions to release them if anything happened to her. It bought her time to disappear. And it worked for 25 years, Rosa added, until the cancer made her sloppy. Emma's mind raced through implications she was only beginning to understand. The package they mentioned. She really sent me something? Salvatore nodded grimly. According to our contacts at the Postal Service, yes. A registered package mailed 3 days before she died. What's in it? We won't know until we retrieve it. But if those Chicago boys are willing to come this far south and risk a war with my organization, it's something they desperately want back. Emma stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see Salvatore's men positioned around the property. Shadows with purpose, watching for threats she couldn't even imagine. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm not cut out for this kind of life. I serve coffee and take orders. I study business management at community college. I don't know anything about money laundering or murders or blackmail. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. Your mother wasn't cut out for it either. But sometimes life doesn't ask what we're prepared for. She spent 25 years looking over her shoulder, Emma said, turning back to face them, moving whenever she felt unsafe, lying about her past. Is that what you want for me? Salvatore leaned forward in his chair. I want you to have choices. But right now, those men took your choices away the moment they walked into my restaurant. Emma sank back onto the couch, the weight of her situation settling around her like a heavy blanket. What happens if I just give them whatever she sent me? What if I hand it over and walk away? They kill you anyway, Rosa said matter-of-factly. You've seen their faces. You know they came looking. You're a loose end. And if I don't give it to them, they keep coming until they get it, Salvatore replied, or until someone stops them permanently. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the generator and the occasional creak of the old house settling. Emma stared into her coffee cup, watching steam rise and dissipate like the simple life she'd known just hours before. There's a third option, Salvatore said quietly. Emma looked up. What? We find out what's in that package together. We evaluate its contents, and we decide how to use it to end this once and for all. Use it how? Rosa smiled, and for the first time Emma saw something dangerous flash behind her grandmother's eyes. Child, information is power. The right information in the right hands can bring down empires. Emma thought about her mother, young and pregnant and terrified, making impossible choices to protect a daughter she hadn't even met yet. She thought about 25 years of running, hiding, lying about the past. She thought about dying alone in a hospital room, sending one final package to the daughter she'd spent a lifetime trying to shield. "If we do this," Emma said slowly, "if we get the package and use whatever's in it, what happens to me afterwards?" Salvatore's expression was honest, even if it wasn't comforting. "I don't know, but I promise you this, you won't face it alone." Outside, one of the guards spoke quietly into his radio. Emma couldn't make out the words, but she saw Salvatore's posture stiffen slightly. "What is it?" she asked. "Probably nothing. My men are just being thorough." But Emma was learning to read the subtle signs, the way information passed between people in this world through glances and gestures. The guard's voice had carried urgency. Salvatore's casual dismissal felt forced. "They found us, didn't they?" Rosa was already moving toward the kitchen. "Time to go, dear." Salvatore stood, his hand moving instinctively toward his jacket. "Not found, but they're getting close." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized their sanctuary had been temporary at best. "How did they track us so quickly?" "Because they're not just street thugs," Salvatore replied, ushering her toward the back of the house. "They're professionals with resources and connections." Rosa appeared with a bag slung over her shoulder and car keys in her hand. "There's another car in the back garage. We can be gone in 2 minutes." As they moved through the house, Emma caught glimpses of the coordinated evacuation happening around them. Salvatore's men were packing equipment, erasing evidence of their presence, preparing to vanish without a trace. "Where do we go now?" Emma asked. Salvatore paused at the back door, listening for sounds from outside. "To get that package, before they do. But my apartment will be watched." "Not your apartment," he said, opening the door and scanning the darkness beyond. "Your mother was smarter than that. She wouldn't have sent something that valuable to your home address." Emma stepped into the cool night air, her mind racing. Then where? Rosa's car was already running, hidden behind the garage with its lights off. As they approached, Emma could hear the distant sound of vehicles on the main road, multiple engines, moving fast. "Your workplace," Salvatore said, helping her into the passenger seat. "She sent it to Romano's restaurant, addressed to you, care of your employer." The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. Her mother had known exactly where Emma worked, had probably been watching from a distance, making sure her daughter was safe even as her own health failed. "It's been sitting in the office this whole time," Emma whispered, "which means we need to get there before those Chicago boys figure out what your mother was really thinking." As Rosa's car pulled away from the safe house, Emma watched the building disappear into the darkness behind them. Somewhere in that night, dangerous men were closing in on their location. Somewhere across the city, a package waited with secrets that had already cost her mother's life. And somewhere in the space between, Emma was discovering that survival meant embracing a strength she never knew she possessed. The drive back toward the city felt like moving toward the center of a storm. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Emma wasn't running away from her mother's past. She was running toward it. She was running toward it. Romano's restaurant sat dark and empty as they approached from the alley behind the building. The neon sign that usually welcomed hungry customers flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows across the brick walls. Emma's hands trembled as she watched Salvatore's men position themselves around the perimeter. "The office is on the second floor," she whispered, pointing to a narrow staircase visible through the back entrance. "Marco keeps all the mail in a filing cabinet behind his desk." Salvatore studied the building's layout with practiced eyes. "How many ways in and out?" "3. Front door, back door, and a fire escape that leads to the office window." Rosa checked her watch. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before those Chicago boys realize we're not at the safe house anymore." The lock on the back door yielded easily to tools that Salvatore's men produced from their jackets. Emma had worked in this building for months, but moving through it in darkness felt like entering a completely different world. Familiar tables and chairs became obstacles. The comforting smell of garlic and herbs now seemed heavy and oppressive. They climbed the stairs in single file, each footstep carefully placed to avoid the creaks Emma knew by heart from countless trips to Marco's office. At the top, Salvatore gestured for everyone to wait while he checked the hallway. "Clear," he whispered. Marco's office door stood slightly ajar, exactly as he always left it. Emma pushed it open slowly, wincing as the hinges groaned softly in protest. Moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating stacks of invoices, employee schedules, and the filing cabinet that might hold the key to everything. "There!" Emma pointed to the metal cabinet in the corner. "He keeps all the mail in the bottom drawer." Rosa pulled out a small flashlight while Salvatore kept watch at the door. The beam of light revealed dozens of envelopes, packages, and official documents, organized by date. Emma's fingers moved through the contents, searching for anything addressed to her. "Here," she breathed, pulling out a padded envelope with her name written in handwriting she recognized instantly. Her mother's careful script, slightly shaky from illness, but unmistakably hers. The package felt heavier than expected. Emma turned it over in her hands, noting the Chicago postmark and the date stamp from 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks. Her mother had been dying, and Emma hadn't even known. "Open it," Salvatore urged softly. Emma's fingers trembled as she tore the edge of the envelope. Inside, she found a smaller metal box, the kind used for safety deposit boxes, along with a folded letter. The paper felt fragile between her fingers as she unfolded it. "My dearest Emma," the letter began in her mother's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the past has finally caught up with us. I'm so sorry for all the lies, all the secrets, all the times I moved us when you just wanted to stay in one place and make friends." Emma's vision blurred as tears gathered in her eyes. Rosa placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, while Salvatore continued watching the hallway. "Inside the box, you'll find everything I took from Chicago 25 years ago. Bank records, photographs, recorded conversations, and documents that prove multiple murders were ordered by the Torino family. I kept these not for revenge, but for protection. They were my insurance policy, my guarantee that you and I could live in peace." Emma clutched the metal box to her chest as sirens wailed in the distance. The evidence her mother had died protecting was finally in her hands. 25 years of running, hiding, and sacrifice had led to this moment. Salvatore helped her to her feet as his men signaled the all clear from downstairs. The Chicago boys had been caught in a police trap 3 blocks away, thanks to an anonymous tip about suspicious activity near the restaurant. "What happens now?" Emma asked, looking at the box that contained enough evidence to destroy an entire crime family. Salvatore's weathered face softened into something resembling a smile. "Now you choose. You can turn this over to the FBI and disappear into witness protection, or you can trust me to handle things the old-fashioned way." Emma thought about her mother's final letter, about the courage it had taken to steal these records while pregnant and terrified. She thought about the 22 years of normal life her mother's sacrifice had given her. "I choose family," she said quietly. 6 months later, Emma stood in the same restaurant where her nightmare had begun, but now she wore a manager's badge instead of a waitress apron. The Chicago organization had crumbled under federal investigation, their leaders facing life sentences based on evidence that had been hidden for decades. Salvatore Kane still sat at his corner table every Tuesday night, but now he wasn't just a customer. He was the uncle she'd never known she had, the protector her mother had trusted with her daughter's future. Sometimes the most dangerous whisper in a crowded room isn't a threat. Sometimes it's a promise, and sometimes that promise changes everything.